Hi, I'm John Groders. Are movies good for you? Are they good for our children? Obviously, there's no simple or one-size-fits-all answer to that question. But today's guest has been working for years to give tools to viewers that allows them to have some control over content someone else made, but that they allow into their own houses. Meet Neal Harmon, co-founder and CEO of VidAngel, today on No Shame.
Have no shame. No, we are not afraid. No shame. On the gospel of His name, it's the power of God by which we all are saved. We need not be afraid. No shame.
Welcome to the No Shame podcast, and my guest is Neal Harmon. Thanks for joining us this morning, Neal. We're glad to have you.
Thanks for having me on, John. It's good to be here.
If you haven't met Neal before, the co-founder, CEO of VidAngel, I mean, that's what you're known for, but you probably there's probably more to you than just your business. Like, what else is there about you? Who are you apart from VidAngel?
I'm a husband and father first. Married a longtime friend from my hometown named Trisha, and we have 9 living children. And
Wait. Did you just say 9?
yes,
Wow. That's 9. You said
yes.
9.
Yes.
That's with an N.
yes, with an N.
Okay.
We lost one. We lost our daughter, but so that's first and foremost in our family, and we've picked up hiking recently as together as a family. So that's been fun during this quarantine.
So where
Craziness.
are you, Neal? Tell me where you're living.
We live about an hour south of Salt Lake City, so lots of mountains, lots of trails, so great hiking.
Great skiing too. I love to ski Utah and come out there a lot and dig it. But so how does it work in the era of social quarantine when you have 9 kids? Do you like ship them all off to relatives, or how does that go?
No, they're friends with each other. They have a good time with each other. We've got our house is right next to a field, and they go out there and play and build drones and build houses and do their schooling and then it's an adventure. They get a little antsy about seeing all their friends and stuff, but we're making do.
Wait, did you say they build drones? They're geniuses?
My son, he built his own drone, and we went hiking up to this place called Squaw Peak, which is about a 7-mile round trip hike, with about a 2,000 foot like rise, and he flew his drone up there and lost it off of a cliff. He was so sad. So, but he built that drone from scratch. So he says about half the equipment is reusable if he builds another one. So anyway, we're having a good time.
How old is he?
He's 17.
Nice. Oh, my goodness. Good for him. Now, does the drone handle enough weight to carry his dad back down the mountain where you get tired or winded or any kind of thing?
Nope.
That's the kind of drone. So Neal, you're on 9 living kids. I'm on 9 grandkids. Just had a new one on Friday last week.
Congratulations.
So we've got 5 biological, 4 foster ones from Africa. So that's 9. So I'm catching you on the second wave. But when you get to that wave, my goodness, the math is uncalculatable by my head when you get to that wave.
Well, if we haven't caused too much damage to our children, then maybe they'll want to have kids too.
Yeah, well, it's not easy to raise children, and I guess I do want to talk about VidAngel a little bit. And from what I've understood, it kind of came out of you being a parent at its heart. Is that accurate?
That's right. It's a long time ago when we had fewer children, and our oldest, who's 17, was 10 then. So we wanted to, one of my favorite movies is called Cinderella Man, and I wanted to show a specific scene in Cinderella Man to our kids. It's when the boxing father, who's suffering through the Great Depression, his son steals a salami, and he takes him back to the salami store, and they return it, and he says, "We don't steal in our family." And I wanted our kids to see that scene, and it's such a great movie. But the New York coach has got a mouth on him, and the language that he used, I didn't want my 10-year-old son using with his sisters. So that's why we created VidAngel, was for that purpose, to tell to share a great story without inviting certain behavior into our home.
That's Russell Crowe, right? Cinderella Man.
Yeah, Russell Crowe.
It's a great movie. I totally agree with you. So, Neal, I was on a similar trek, but came up with a different. So I was on a ski trip actually with my son Jed Adaya when he was 12. We were in Whistler in Vancouver, and he got to that same age that your son was 10, where there was an awkwardness because. I mean, 12-year-old kids are pretty sophisticated. If you haven't been around them lately, you might think they're just children. But a 12-year-old kid,
they're an adult in their mind.
And so to say, hey, we're going to go watch this cartoon movie about unicorns, that's not a father-son thing.
Yeah.
But then, like you say, maybe I want to go to a movie with my son on a ski trip because we're bonding and we're being men. And maybe I want to, but there's James Bond so I was the same boat thinking, man, there's nothing out there at that point that I felt great. Like me and Jed would both love this movie together, and yet it would also support who we wanted to be. So my response was to make a movie, and I've been a writer and a director. And so we made The Frontier Boys. It took 4 or 5 years to get it funded and made, but we made The Frontier Boys, which was my first feature, exactly so that fathers and sons would have great content to experience together that was safe. That was kind of, I guess I would say, how God directed me.
I haven't seen that yet. Yeah, I want to see that. It's The Frontier Boys.
The Frontier Boys. Yeah, it won awards all over the world. It's a very strong movie, great music, and it was made specifically for my son. Now, a lot of other people end up benefiting because I believe that was a godly initiative that he gave to me, and I loved it. And now you had that same instance, recognizing, how can I see Cinderella Man? And so you had another idea. Can you just... If someone's never heard of VidAngel, give me the
you bet.
pitch.
So the idea behind VidAngel is that, well, it's twofold. So our original goal was similar to yours. Like, we felt like there needs to be better content than what's out there today, and so we want. But we said, if we can create software that makes it easy for people to skip just the little bits that they say, that'd be a great movie, except for this one thing. If we create really great software for that, then we'll collect an audience of people who are interested in the similar type of media, who are interested in their families, interested in contributing to society, and that group of people, we can publish content to them, new content. So that was the idea, and so the very first version of VidAngel was all about the skipping. So skip over just the bad language from Russell Crowe's The Cinderella Man, or just skip over the scene with nudity in it, whatever you find objectionable in your home. And then the next iteration was to take all those skip choices and make better content. And that was VidAngel Studios and Dry Bar Comedy and The Chosen and the content that we're about to start announcing. So...
Well, yeah, so there's two sides to VidAngel. That's right. The skipping, and then there's the creating of the new. The creating of the new is just unquestionably perfect and wonderful. I'm super pumped for you on that. Love Dallas and what's going on with there. I'm a content creator. The first side of that, I just want to think about that together, because as believers, as followers of Christ, why do we want, at the deepest level, to filter what goes into our ears, into our eyes? Why do we want to do that?
John, that's a really great question. I've thought about this often, and I have a spot in my heart for creators and their desire to share their messages without them being changed or altered. But I also have an understanding of being a parent. And when I came, so I was a missionary in Mexico, and I learned to speak Spanish very, very well. I studied it in my entire time that I was there. And when I came back, I aced a bunch of tests speaking Spanish, straight A's, got tons of credit because I had learned Spanish so well. Well, I went to teach Spanish, and the students that I was teaching at the time, they didn't speak well. And I knew that they weren't speaking well, and I was bugged by their poor grammar and their poor use of words, and they'd make the same mistakes over and over again, and I knew that they were mistakes. But after I was with these students for a year teaching them, I found myself slipping and making the same mistakes. And then after, and I was so frustrating because I know not to say that, but I just said it. And then when I went back into a college class with a professor who was doing advanced grammar, and I was around his perfect Spanish again, I noticed that immediately my language, I was attracted to his. And so there's this involuntary thing that happened for me, even as an adult, that I think happens to a greater extent for young people because their minds are so malleable, that we become... our environment becomes a little like us, and we become a little like our environment. And so the desire to skip or the desire to filter what comes into our home, I think, stems from that. That's a desire to be virtuous, a desire to follow God and keep His commandments. And the way that we do that is by surrounding ourselves with the very best.
You know, I really agree with that. And censorship is one of those words nobody likes. Like, there's nobody in the world that thinks censorship, it's just associated with communist propaganda and it's associated with North Korea. So if you say censorship, okay, well then, but I was thinking about that this morning, and I was doing a little very quick Bible study. And I came across this, like, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. None of those are from the Father, but they're from the world. That I found 1 John 2:15. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, those are not from the Father, but are from the world. So I was thinking, I've got to self-censor some things if I want the Father to be directing my steps today instead of the world. And I am so susceptible. It's one thing to talk about our kids. I mean, I can definitely make the same. I don't have 9, but I've got 9 grandkids. I want to filter what my grandkids experience because I know better for them. But when it comes to me, I always find it so ironic that we use the term mature content and adult videos. Because what in the world is mature or adult about leading us down paths of lust? It's an easy sell. It's like selling sugar to a 5-year-old. It's an easy sell.
Yeah.
To me, what's really, I guess this is me kind of moralizing here, but I want to hear your thoughts on this. What's really mature is when I find my ability to self-censor, to not look at things which will cause lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes. That's what I find mature, but it is really hard in the world that we live in, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And whenever I find myself looking at something twice, I'm just like, there's signs all around us, there's ads, there's stuff on the internet, and what my goal is to never look twice, because you're not going to avoid this stuff in our society, and so that's what we try to teach in our home is just let's work towards not looking twice, and but you're absolutely right, and I'm glad to talk with somebody like you who it's easy to find common ground on protecting children, but in reality, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I mean, we're hypocrites if we skip over stuff for our kids. And then when it's late at night, we go and watch the stuff on our own and feed those lusts. That's very hypocritical. So
yeah,
I agree with you.
So VidAngel is born out of a desire, and I'm putting words into your mouth, you can correct me, to give people access to, thousands of hours, thousands of movies, more content than we could ever create in 1,000 lifetimes. To say, all right, we're not going to pretend this doesn't exist. We're not going to pretend Cinderella Man is not a great movie. But so rather than sort of ban it, burn the books, right? Salem witch trials, we're going to burn the books by anybody that we disagree with. Now, all right, let's go to a next step. Let's not burn the books, but let's also not pretend that media doesn't have influence over us. And if we're believers that sin is poison to us, then we have to be honest and say, hey, we can allow a door for sin to take root in us. So VidAngel says, is there a second way? Is there a middle ground? Can we what I like to call what you would refer to as the airline cuts. I fly a lot. I'm flying all over the world all the time. I watch a lot of movies, and there was at least an era. I don't know if it's still going on because it seems to have changed in the last year, but where I really saw some great movies on the airline cuts, came back and recommended them, and then realized, I saw a different movie than I just recommended. The airline cut was cleaned up, right?
Yes.
It was cleaned up, and it was actually really good. And then I saw another version, and I'm like, it's a totally different movie.
Yeah. That's what they do. And the airline cuts are dying because of the individual screens, which is frustrating for me because when I fly with my family, obviously that's a huge ordeal. But when somebody next to one of my children is watching something really trashy,
individual
I'm just
screen.
like, come on.
Right. They are not individual, are they?
Yeah. So it's frustrating for me. But I would say that VidAngel is born out of a desire to create a bridge between two worlds that are increasingly separating from each other. And popular culture is important. That being part of the story of what's happening in our society is important, and we want to participate in that conversation. But we also want to maintain our own values. And I don't know whether those worlds get so far apart that we need more people like you, John, who are just going out and creating better content. But in the meantime, we're trying to create a bridge, and that's our goal.
Well, that's the call. I got this Michelangelo quote. It's possible he didn't say it, but I was told he said, "Don't criticize, create." And so I'm trying to follow that, although by nature I really am critical and find that my own heart is easily falls into, man, can I criticize? But I'm trying to do by the creation, sort of let your game do the talking on the field kind of a thing. But you've got a chance with the filtration software, and I think this is really unique, to not say, we're going to be the board of censorship from on high. We're going to let you, this is a big emphasis, you're going to make you're going to let you make the choice, let the family make the choice.
Yep.
And so you've got all these different filters. You can filter out profanity, you can filter out violence, you can filter out nudity. That's a little bit of a different approach than the censorship boards or other approaches that have been tried before. Is that right?
That's right, and it's a fresh approach. We think it should be an approach that's embraced by the audience and by the creators, because the creators have more freedom. They're not having to stare at a Chinese censorship review board, or they're not having to stare at the what's the name of the agency that enforces the TV cut in the U.S. Anyway, they're not having to go and convince some board of what to do. They just create what they feel like they need to create, and then the home decides what they feel like is appropriate for their home. We feel like that's the right middle ground, and then if we can create a feedback loop where the creators are actually looking at what the homes are choosing in an aggregate, like data kind of way, that should be the internet way, right? We have this benefit of data and a huge customization throughout all of our lives in the internet world, and so why shouldn't that extend to film? So
that seems entirely logical. We're talking with Neal Harmon, the co-founder and CEO of VidAngel. You probably know of the Dove Foundation. The Dove Foundation's been around a long time. Dove's seal of approval would go on the cover of a movie and give the family some idea of what that movie content was. It's another kind of a tool. So I went, that movie I mentioned, Frontier Boys, which came out in 2011, won the Dove Foundation's Movie of the Year. So it got a great endorsement. And I went on a trip with their president, Dick Rolfe, to Hollywood, and we visited the headquarters of Disney and of Fox,
Warner Brothers.
I don't think I went to Warner Brothers, but I visited about 10 of those different studios because Dick invited me to come along so that I could meet them in case we might ever work together. And we'd had these meetings. And his approach was very similar to yours. And I was talking to Dick, I remember on the plane, like, why would they meet with you? Why are these guys going to meet with you? Because what do they want? He says, hey, look, it's a way to get additional revenue for their movies. It's a way for them to make more money. Because a movie that's done a run and it's kind of done its thing. Now, if the Dove seal of approval comes on, that there's a big market out there that might be interested in that movie. And so in a way, what seems like it's a restrictive combative, oh, Hollywood bad, Dove good. Well, if you put it in a different frame of light, it's like, hey, we can actually give you additional dollars for this investment
Yep.
if you let us tell our audiences. And then, of course, Dove's ultimate goal was to actually try to be influencing those studios to keep that market in their mind. And we'd have to get Dick Rolfe on here to talk, or their current president, whether they thought that happened or not. But in the same way, you can say what VidAngel would offer to a movie is greater exposure, not less, right? Is that
It's
fair?
proven. It's proven. So there was a UCLA professor who does lots of copyright work for the studios. His name's Doug Lickman. And after the lawsuit began, where Disney sued VidAngel in 2016, he approached us and said, would you share, or actually I don't remember how that went down, but somehow we connected with Doug Lickman, and he said, if you share your data with me, then I think it'll be, if you guys are telling the truth, that there's a bigger market, that people are really after skipping, then this is going to be very good for you. But if it's not, and you're just, and you're just trying to get around content restrictions, then this is going to be very bad for you. And we said, well, we're not afraid of the data. So we gave him millions and millions of records, anonymized records, of skip choices that people had made. And he studied that data with 2 PhDs for a year and a half, and they did all this supercomputer crunching on it and such. And they found out that there is a huge market, and that that we were in fact extending the reach of what the studios would watch. Because what they found in that data is that for like Disney related movies, about 65% of the titles watched on our system, those people wouldn't have watched them without like the Disney, Marvel, the traditionally family-friendly movies. People wouldn't have watched them without being able to skip something. And then with the non-family-friendly movies, that number was like 75% of the time they wouldn't have watched them. And so this was like 300,000 people that were studied. And, that is a very statistically significant audience. And we knew that we were just barely touching the iceberg. The overall market size we found was about 52 million in the US. And we're talking 300,000. That's all the penetration we got before Disney sued us. And that data is irrefutable. They never were able to refute it in court. They never were able to come up with an alternative explanation because it's just there.
So, you can't help. I remember a book that came out when I was in college, which was a few years ago now, Neal. It was by Michael Medved. It was called Hollywood versus America. So we're talking around 1980, I think this book came out. So while maybe 82 or 83. Hollywood versus America was a study way back then that was looking at what was more profitable, R-rated movies or PG-rated movies or G-rated movies. Because the trend was moving very rapidly towards R-rated movies. And it was irrefutable way back then that the money was much greater in what I would have considered more family-friendly content. But that didn't slow Hollywood down one iota. And you would think that as a business, this is actually where logic escapes me, that somebody in the business office would say, okay, we got to make more family-friendly movies because we're making more money on it. But that didn't really seem to happen. And I don't have anything current. You probably do. But even today, it's really the family cartoons that make the most money, right?
Oh, yeah. We have a study on that. We have a 15-year study on the films that have come out. And the films rated R account for 52% of titles that have come out in the last 15 years.
Exactly.
And the films rated G, PG, and PG-13 account for 48% of titles. But that block, the 48% block, is generating about 75% of the revenue. And then the R-rated movies are generating about a quarter of the revenue. So it's off. And we think that the problem is that the feedback loop that the artists are following are the Grammys and the Oscars. Like they're looking for their peers to validate what they've done. and their distribution channels are relatively locked down. Like, it's hard to get into distribution. You know this because you created a movie, and getting to break into the traditional distribution network, if you're not one of the big studios, is hard to do. And so you got this chicken and an egg problem where the creators are all looking at each other for their validation, and then they have a lockdown distribution channel, so they're not understanding what the market's saying to them well enough. And we that needs to be broken, and it is being broken right now. Like, the internet is rebuilding the distribution network, and VidAngel, we want to be part of this, and we want to be part of that conversation. We want to help change the way media, the feedback that people are looking less at the Oscars and the Grammys, and they're looking more at the skip choices of families to decide what to make, because it enhances their bottom line.
You can imagine another industry, because this really is puzzling. I mean, I just read yesterday that for the first time ever, that in the United States, more trucks and SUVs are being sold than sedans and cars. So SUVs, in fact, like Ford has no cars anymore. They're all sedans. So if the economy went and people started wanting more SUVs and cars, and that was accounting for 75% of Ford's income, and instead they made the bulk of their product line continually to be sedans, nobody would take that seriously. But in the entertainment industry, that's par for the course.
Right. Well, and they're able to do that for a small time, for a window, because they had locked down the theaters, the distribution networks, and so you ate what the artists wanted to create, and now that's changing, and it's going to change.
Well, and you are what you eat. I say that about media all the time. You are what you consume. It affects you. It affects the way you think. It affects your heart. The last film I did was called Tortured for Christ, and we were able to do kind of the Fathom style release, and that was a way to get a movie out to 100,000 people. But it's not the same as the access for 1,500 screens, and those barriers to entry are very real, and they are very expensive. And that leads me now to I guess maybe the future of VidAngel, which is original content, and that seems like something that you've had. I guess, I don't know. The two that are sort of popular right now clearly are the Dallas Jenkins series, The Chosen, and your comedy series. So, give me the story behind those two. How did you get involved with Dallas and his series?
Well, let's start with Dry Bar, because Dry Bar preceded The Chosen.
Well, that's the opposite of a wet bar, by the way? Or is that a nautical term that you're trying to get to shore and you run aground? What is dry bar?
It's just a double meaning. It's a play on words. So Dry Bar is actually the stand-up comedy series is shot in an old bar. And we don't serve alcohol there because we invite kids to come as well.
I got it. Okay.
And so dry humor, right. Dry Bar. It was just a play on words, and it was fun, and so it stuck. Plus, it sticks in people's minds. So anyway, so we started right after Disney sued us, and a California judge gave them an injunction. We immediately started VidAngel Studios and shooting these Dry Bar comedy episodes. And what we did with the comedians is we said, you can come here and you can perform whatever you want, however you want. But here's a list of things that people are skipping, and if they skip your stuff, you get the base pay, but if they don't skip your stuff, you get bonuses. And that's all we did. And now we've had 300 comedians come and perform here. It's become a beloved brand by comedians and audiences alike, and we generate over 1 billion views a year with Dry Bar comedy. So what we did was we took funny comedians, got them to perform in a way that matched a safe, clean audience, and the market was bigger. And that was our premise. And then after we succeeded with Dry Bar, we said, how do we extend this to larger scale productions like TV series or movies? And so we were looking for what was going to be our very first original dramatic series. And at that time, Matthew Ferracci connected Dallas Jenkins and VidAngel and showed us this little 20-minute clip from the it's called The Shepherd, and it was created by Dallas Jenkins for his church in Illinois. And we watched this, and we were stunned by what he had created and what this could become. and we just had to get behind it. So then we helped The Chosen raise over $10 million from 19,000 people, the audience, and the first season was released in November of last year, and it has been a smashing success. We cannot be more thrilled with how well The Chosen is doing, how well it's being received.
That's fantastic. And I think those are two good examples, because really comedy has a fantastic advantage in that it's enormously inexpensive to produce. It's a guy on a stage with a microphone and a camera, and that's really the highest level of the game. It's not like that's a cheap version of comedy. It's about the content, and it's about whether the guy or gal is funny.
Yes.
So that's a really good way to step in. Now, dramatic scripted series, however, especially period pieces, can fall on the other end of the financial scale. It takes.
Yes.
I'm in the middle of. We're in the middle of a period movie right now. We shot all January and February over in Romania for this prequel.
Thank
film.
goodness you got that done before this pandemic.
Well, I got 3/4 of it done.
Oh,
because
no.
We shot all the winter scenes, and we were supposed to be there. Actually, this very week. This was the 6 days we were scheduled to be filming this week. So we've had to delay our final shoot, but I mean, this is my edit suite. I've been able to spend days in here just really crafting the scenes that we've done. So it's been okay, and I know we'll get back there and finish. But I do know that period pieces, require every single stitch of costumes on that screen have to be period appropriate. You've got to, shoot in ways where you don't see antennas and airplanes in the modern world. That limits. Period pieces take money, and The Chosen. To do a biblical piece, and I've done biblical stories too. You've got all kinds of research to really be accurate to Israel of the day, the Galilee, the nature of the Jewish. So there's money that is just got to be involved. And Dallas had a fantastic success raising legitimate money to do legitimate work. Not absurd money. I'm not talking like Disney money, but legitimate money. And I'm not really, and I heard him speak last year at ICVM. In fact, we were on a panel together, and I was so happy that he could do it. But I don't know how you guys got involved. So maybe you can share with me the bridge between VidAngel and
so VidAngel, after we were sued by Disney, we told our customer, that we were sued by Disney 2 weeks after we said to our customers, hey, we're thinking about raising money. Would you guys like to invest in the company? And 2 weeks later, we got a lawsuit. And Disney knew about us because we had written them, asked them for feedback. They'd known about us for a long time before that. But as soon as they heard that we were raising money, they jumped in and sued us. So that lawsuit began, and we said, okay, we're not going to be able to raise money, but if you guys want to help us continue to exist and to fight this battle to the Supreme Court, we need about $5 million. And so we went ahead and went forward with our crowdfunding raise with our customers, and we raised $10 million in 5 days. And after that raise was done, one of the co-founders of VidAngel, my brother Daniel, he called me and he said, Neal, if you applied this crowdfunding idea to content, wouldn't that be powerful? And I said, that is a really great idea. So immediately we started thinking because if the audience is deciding whether or not something gets funded, then the market's already validated before you even begin production. And so when Dallas came to us with the short film, we said, hey, we want to get behind this, but the way to get behind this is to help you raise money from enough people to fund it. And if we get enough people who are interested in funding it, then there'll be a big enough market for it to be successful financially. And that's what we did. And so and that's the model for VidAngel Studios, is that we partner with the creators. We help them raise money and then give them distribution after it's done. So that's our role is to help in the fundraising process, and then to help in the distribution process. And then Dallas's role and the magic that he's created. He's the content captain, and he's the one who decides where the creative direction goes and those types of things. And he's become quite he's become quite good at just selling the project himself. And Dallas is just an incredible director, business person / everything, and he's done a great job.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about that. I'm excited about that model. I'm excited that there's no doubt you guys have been, you talk about Cinderella Man, you've kind of been in the boxing ring. You guys have been smacked around a little bit, right? I mean, this hasn't been downhill the whole way for you guys. This has been tough.
No, this has been born, and you can tell when you watch The Chosen. The Chosen was born out of tremendous opposition, and VidAngel was as well, and we're rethinking distribution. I mean, The Chosen was launched both on VidAngel and in its own app that VidAngel created, which has now been it is getting more downloads than HBO and Vudu as an app for its own series. It's getting more daily downloads than these major players.
Wow.
Because we're solving a problem that the market needs us to solve in the way that the market wants us to solve it. And that wouldn't have happened. That kind of innovation happens because we're, somebody's got their boot to our head trying to kill us, and we're just trying to make it out of it and still succeed and give the people what they want.
We did you remind me of... Well, so many things. I mean, there's so many parallels that come to mind. I mean, Jesus gets in the boat and crosses the Sea of Galilee, and he goes to the Decapolis, and he gets out of the boat, and there's this demoniac right on the shoreline who's cutting himself, and he's so powerful and terrible and dangerous, and he's probably done every crime you can imagine, and the disciples don't get out of the boat. They're not supposed to be over there. So there's this, but Jesus gets out of the boat and takes it on. Or you could say Paul, he goes all the way into Macedonia, and he comes across, we filmed in Ephesus. And his place where he's teaching people is across the small street from the biggest brothel in Ephesus. This idea that the gospel can come into dangerous places. And the dangerous places actually are interested. When you say there's more downloads of The Chosen than there is of HBO, it's not because we're forcing tracks down anybody's throat, right? I mean, it's very capitalistic. This is the market, and we're going to give them something that both we believe is true and healthy, but we're not forcing it.
We're letting people watch it for free.
Yeah.
And then people pay it forward after they watch it, so more people can watch it for free. It's a totally different model, and but it's working. It's totally working. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're generating. Well, HBO extracts an enormous amount from Game of Thrones, but we're okay with not making as high of profits as the rest of the market. Yeah. As long as we're solving a market problem and that we're able to generate a return, because that's the key, is generating a return lets you get your message out to a broader audience.
So let's talk about the opposition. How do you view these lawsuits? I mean, it's public knowledge that you guys got fined $62 million. That's a lot of dollars. It's public knowledge that all the major studios were. So this battle, anybody can read about this. How do you view this opposition? And do you say, well, hey, maybe we made some mistakes legally? Do we see this as a spiritual battle? Do we think that we were right and now new legislation will clarify? I mean, how do you place all this stuff?
Well, first of all, let's put the 62 million. That's a breathtaking number.
That is breathtaking.
It is a breathtaking number. It is by the studio's own admission, the largest per title damages award in copyright history. So we were treated worse than the pirates were. Even though we contacted them in advance, even though we asked them for feedback, even though we tried to work with them in three different ways before we tried the way that they sued us over, we were treated worse than the pirates. That just doesn't make sense on its face. We think that thing will be overturned, and that they were trying to use that $62 million number to squash us, to kill our company, and to just put this thing under the rug, and it's over. And also to scare anyone else off from ever trying something like this again. In fact, that was their closing line in their argument and trial was, you guys need to punish these guys to stop the next VidAngel. That's what they said. Okay, so where But when you look at the $62 million number, this is pennies in the kind of the grand scheme of things of distribution and what these kind of money these companies are dealing with. It is pennies. So we look at this and we say this is going to be a rounding error long term for our company, because we're headed on a path that is so important to give an alternate form of distribution that we just need to fight through it and pay the bill. So, and in fact, a third-party trustee came into our case and to decide whether to liquidate the company, whether we had no chance of survival, or whether to offer some plan where we say, you only pay off $10 million, but then there are these stipulations, and you come kind of agreement in a bankruptcy process. And he came in and he looked at how fast we were growing and what we were doing, and he's like, you guys can pay off this whole bill. And so he submitted a plan to the bankruptcy court and said, VidAngel's going to pay the whole bill, and they're just going to sail right out of bankruptcy. And we love that option because it also means that we get all of our rights in court, that we can appeal these rulings, that we can fight this all the way up to the Supreme Court if we need to. And we think it'll be overturned long term. But if it's not, it'll be a rounding error. And if the law and if society says we don't want families on modern devices to have these kind of rights without the studio's permission, if that's what society says, then we are just going to fight with the tools that we have on the turf that we've gained, and we think that long term, the long game will win. But in the short term, we might have a loss there. But that's a battle. It's not the whole war. But we think that on its face that we're right, and that we eventually will overturn those rulings. But we're okay if we don't.
How's your stomach? I mean, when I get a letter that's legal, and I've been, in business long enough too, stuff's going to come at you. Man, it just puts a pit in my stomach. How do you handle all this courtroom stuff? And I mean, how are you built to handle this stuff?
I don't think I was. I think I've lost a lot of hair. You can look at the top of my head, and I'm very gray now. This has not been an easy process. I've been deposed I don't know how many times. We've spent millions and millions of dollars on litigation, and it's exhausting. But the only reason that I feel like I can continue to do it is because I don't see any other path. Like, this battle has to be fought for people. It has to be done. And because it has to be done, and there's so many people who are behind us, I think that the prayers and the hopes of the people who are behind us are what sustain me. And otherwise, I don't think I could get through it. I mean, I'm just being honest. I just don't think I could. I remember getting the Disney lawsuit. I remember where I was when the private investigator came and dropped me this set of papers, and it said Disney on it. And I was like, no way. We wrote these guys a year ago to ask for them for feedback. And why is it Disney who's suing us? And I was confused at first. And it did, like, to your point, there was a dropping feeling in my gut, because I knew at that moment we wouldn't have more funding from VCs. We wouldn't have more. We would have the cloud hanging over us, because it's the largest media company in the world suing us. We would have a cloud hanging over us until we got through this. And it's been the people like you, John, and people that backed us, that have sustained us as a company.
Speaking with Neal Harmon, co-founder of VidAngel and CEO, and he's been through the fire. And the fire is hot. It can harden you. It can strengthen you. And we see in the Bible, every single one of the disciples go through the fire. Every single follower of Jesus is promised that there will be persecution and there will be suffering. It's not really even optional. And you don't think that it's going to happen to you until it happens to you. And like you just said, man, the support and the prayers and the followers that let you know they're praying for you, the actual comfort of the Prince of Peace in times of trial, lead Paul with his legs stretched apart as far as they can be in stocks in Philippi to start singing hymns at midnight. To start singing hymns at midnight with his legs. I mean, this has been the nature of the followers, and now it can be done through litigation. Now we can be persecuted in all kinds of different ways. But I 100% agree, there's got to be another distribution channel. And I'm one of 1,000 content creators who've got magnificent scripts and dreams and beliefs that there's the content that I think will not only entertain hundreds and thousands of people, but edify them. And that in that process, they'll realize this actually is what I want in my house on my 60-inch television with my family night. You talked about family night. This is how I want to learn history, through an entertaining film. So Dallas is teaching us biblical history and hopefully inciting us to go back to the Bible and read the context, maybe visit. And I want to do the same thing with with America Studios, and other people are going to have ideas. But truthfully, I look down and I say, those gatekeepers have just changed. I don't have to get through the studios of the way, but I'm going to have to get through the Netflix executives. And I'm going to have to get through executives who do not see the world the way I see, who censor out stuff all the time that I don't want censored out. And they put in stuff all the time that isn't even true. So where are we going to go to make this content available that feels right? And you guys have done it in a way that says, we're going to leave the choice up to the audience. This isn't us and our brilliance, describing for every family what's appropriate and what isn't. You've said very wisely, how do I know what's appropriate for your family? You know, but I will try to give you options, both through skipping content that is just not healthy for you as the poison pill, but now even more so by creating a platform for fantastic content where it's actually got a chance to be successful. And by successful, to me, it means we didn't lose our shirt and we can do the next one. That's really all success means. That's all I'm after.
You need a return. That's all you need, is to get a return on what you create. And if you can get a return, it can grow, and you'll be able to tell your investors and the crowd and the audience that you can do the next one, and you'll be able to continue to get your message out. And
may the winners be the winners because their stuff is great. And
that's
not
right.
Because anyone fingered it, but because the stuff is worthy, because the cars run better, because the food is delivered faster, but because in our case, the scenes are believable, the content keeps you on the edge of your seat, and you say at the end, man, I love that, I can't wait to see the next one. That's what we're after.
Amen.
That kind of excellence. Well, man, it's been great talking to you inside your black basket. It does look like you're inside. Somebody write me, what's the name of that basket company? I can't remember. It's a big, long name. You look like
I'm sorry that I'm in a basket. I don't have. I'm shooting this from home, and I just had to grab a divider to block, because I don't really have a nice place like you do to have a nice background for people.
Yeah, I got a green screen behind me, and I put a logo on my green screen, so you can put anything behind you. But
okay, gotcha. Gotcha.
I am in a studio that is in our office, and I'm, like I said, we can socially distance. I can come in here all by myself and sit here and edit, 10 hours a day, which I've been doing for many days, and I'm thankful for the opportunity. And I'm thankful, Neal, to meet you and to have time to get to talk to you today. It's been great. I know you've taken out your time to be with us on a small little podcast. So thank you for your time. It's been really appreciated.
Oh, it's been my pleasure to talk to you. What an engaging conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing your film and what else you create in the future.
Well, trust me, I'll be sending some stuff to you. So
okay, great.
you got time to look at it right now.
Okay.
All right. God bless you, Neal. Thank you.
You too.
Have no shame. No, we are not afraid. No shame of the gospel of His name. It's the power of God by which we all are saved. We need not be afraid.
No Shame is a weekly podcast where John Groders discusses life at the intersection of faith and culture with all kinds of interesting and inspiring guests. Subscribe to the podcast today by going to johngroders.com, select the podcast tab, and hit subscribe. Listen or watch whenever you have the time, but don't miss any of these life-giving conversations.